Hi, welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher's my name, program Focal Point Network AFR Talk. You know, it's interesting. Sometimes people get caught being racist and they apparently are completely oblivious to it. Now, racism is when you make decisions exclusively based on skin color. You're in, you're out. You get to sit in the front of the bus. You got to sit in the back of the bus. You get a drink from this fountain. You can't, simply because of the color of your skin. That is racism. Now, in the Canadian Broadcasting Company, CBC, they've got a children's program. They're advertising for a kids host, for a kids program. It's got to be a male kids CBC host. Here is the casting call. Please only submit if you match the following criteria: male between the ages of 23 to 35, and get this, any race except Caucasian. Any race except Caucasian. You know, and Clarence Thomas, this is an interesting kind of a flip side of this. Clarence Thomas went to segregated schools, lived in segregated communities, went to a segregated church, and he says there was nothing inferior about it. In fact, what Clarence Thomas says, what liberals do, and this is racism, this is condescension, it is arrogance, it is paternalism. What he exposes here is that liberals believe that if it's black, it's inferior. Number to call, by the way, if I didn't give the number, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840, the number to call. Hang on a second. Did my earpiece again. And he says, look, the liberals, when they hear the word black, they automatically assume that it's inferior. And he resents that. He resents the heck out of that. He says, my high school was not inferior. My neighborhood was not inferior. My church was not inferior. My family was not inferior. I have never believed it, and I never will. And he said this. He actually wrote this one time. It never amazed me that the courts are so willing to assume that anything that is predominantly black must be inferior. In other words, that's racism. He said, I went to all black schools. I lived in all black neighborhoods. I had a wonderful life in those neighborhoods. And then he says, well, people will say this to him. People think you're making it up. You're just trying to paint the South in a way that it wasn't, because they have a narrative, a racist narrative. And here's a piece from the Daily Mail Online indicating that anti-racism lessons actually increase intolerance. In other words, the more you focus on race, the more you talk about the differences between the race, the more you try to pressure students into becoming ethnically sensitive, the more resentment you breed in students. Children who are given anti-racism lessons in school are more likely to be intolerant outside the classroom, a major study found yesterday. It said accusing white pupils of racism causes animosity, and discussing sensitive ethnic concerns such as honor killings paints minority group children in a bad light. When more attention in class is being paid to the multicultural society, the liberalizing effect of positive contact in class on youngsters' xenophobic attitude decreases. In other words, it just makes the problem worse. If you got a problem, it just makes it worse when you focus attention on it, particularly when you try to create white guilt in white students. So what they're planning to do in England, this is coming from England, is they're going to focus more on British history, less on diversity, less on multiculturalism, and more on our common heritage in British history. So multiculturalism, they're discovering, actually has an unexpected negative effect. I couldn't agree more what we ought to be emphasizing. We just ought to be ignoring skin color. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It's immaterial. We agree with Martin Luther King Jr. We should judge people. We should judge them. We're invited to. Martin Luther King says, go ahead and judge my kids. Just do it on the basis of the content of their character and not the color of their skin. Time to get past this multiculturalism diversity bilge and talk about the things that we share in common. the values, the ideals of Western civilization, American history, the Judeo-Christian tradition. That's where our unity is found. So that's interesting. Now, President Obama, a couple of quick sound bites. I want to grab clip number 7. This is President Obama from his press conference yesterday, and you've got a lot of pieces out there, a lot of analysis from pundits on the left acknowledging that President Obama has lost his mojo, doesn't have the juice, it's gone. Maureen Dowd, New York Times yesterday, he's already a lame duck president. He's got almost 4 years to go, and already the left has written him off as a lame duck. The mojo's gone, can't get anything done. And Jonathan Karl of ABC News asked him about this yesterday at the press conference. Let's listen.
Mr. President, you are 100 days into your second term. On the gun bill, you put, it seems, everything into it to try to get it passed. Obviously, it didn't. Congress has ignored your efforts to try to get them to undo these sequester cuts. There was even a bill that you threatened to veto that got 92 Democrats in the House voting yes. So my question to you is, do you still have the juice to get the rest of your agenda through this Congress?
Well, if you put it that way, Jonathan, maybe I should just pack up and go home.
Now, that is not actually a bad idea, and I'm going to just alert you to the fact that you are liable to hear President Obama say that again and again right here on this program. And here's the piece from Maureen Dowd, New York Times, bottoms up lame duck. She calls President Obama, she's a hardcore leftist, calls President Obama a lame duck. Here's how the column begins. During the 2012 campaign, the president and his top advisors like to make the argument that if he was reelected, the fever would break. Washington would no longer be the graveyard of progress, the crypt of consensus. Once dystopian Republicans accepted that Obama was not running again, they would start cooperating with him. But it's beginning to sink in that the opposite may be true. The president called a press conference. He quickly ended up playing defense, dwelling on how hemmed in he feels. And then she quotes Jonathan Karl asking Obama if he was out of juice. And Obama replied later in that soundbite, I just played part of it, you seem to suggest somehow that folks over there, talking about Congress, have no responsibilities, and then my job is to somehow to get them to behave. And Maureen Dowd says, actually, it is your job to get them to behave. So the natives are restless out there on the left. The White House, everybody acknowledges that his performance yesterday was listless. He sounded bored. He sounded disengaged. And it's because, ladies and gentlemen, I will tell you the truth. We have a president that has absolutely no idea what to do. I mean, that's what we're looking at. We are looking at incompetence on steroids, ineptitude on steroids. We have a president, all he knows how to do is agitate. He does not know how to govern. He's absolutely clueless. He has not one idea, not one single idea about how to use his executive power to actually run this country. He's clueless. He has no idea what to do. Maybe I should just pack up and go home. Yeah, just pack up and go home. Now, the way the White House is spinning the press conference, I mean, they're admitting that it was a pretty lackluster effort. But here's what a White House official said yesterday on the big issues. The source of the president's juice is the American people. And he still got the juice because the American people are with him on big issues like guns, immigration, and the budget. Picks those three, guns, immigration, and the budget. Here is survey or polling data from CNN. On the federal budget deficit, 38% of the American people approve what he's doing, 58% disapprove. In other words, he doesn't have the juice of the American people on the budget. On immigration, 44% approve of the job he's doing, 50% disapprove. He doesn't have the juice of the American people on immigration. And on guns, 45% approve, 52% disapprove. He doesn't have the juice of the American people on gun control. And these were the two issues. Remember that guns and immigration, that was going to be the hallmark of his second term. Well, let's grab some phone calls. Let's go to Jan, Bel Air, Ohio. Jan, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
How is the Christian Tiger conservative talk host?
Hey.
Love it. Okay. I've got some news, two pieces of news for you concerning that pill. This was on the radio about a week and a half ago on the Glenn Beck show, and it wasn't out of his mouth. It was out of the Green Czar's mouth, and this is what they said, almost word for word. We have to get rid of 25 million Americans, and I don't know how we're going to do it. And this pill will definitely do that, because you're going to see, after these women decide to have a baby and want to keep it, the birth fatalities will be so high, and if they are not, you'll see effects worse than thalidomide when they do decide to keep their children.
Yeah, well, and he's right about that, Jan. That's Van Jones, I think you were talking about, and he said, look, this Plan B, this thing is just as good an approach as any to reduce the population. And remember, secular fundamentalists, they have a profoundly anti-biblical worldview. They believe that there are too many people on planet Earth. The Bible doesn't say that. The cultural mandate, Genesis 1:28, is be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. We haven't done it. We've talked with Cal Beisner on this program. You could move everybody in the world to the state of Texas, use a third of the land for living accommodations, a third for factories and stuff, and a third for recreation, and the rest of the world would be empty, and they wouldn't be crowded living in Texas. We have not filled the earth. We got a lot of work to do. So this is my appeal to our listening audience. Get busy. We haven't filled the earth yet. Let's be fruitful and multiply. You know what to do. Let's start getting it done. But the left believes we've got too many people. We got to get rid of them. I mean, that was exactly the philosophy of Planned Parenthood. We got too many of the wrong kind of people. We got to get rid of the wrong kind of people, people of color. And then you've got leftist environmentalists that are saying we have to get rid of people because people are a parasite. They're like noxious weeds on planet Earth. Another bad week, by the way, for environmentalists. 32 record low temperatures were set last week compared to every one record high. 32 record low temperatures last week for every single record high temperature that was set. Looking bad for Al Gore. Coda, another green energy company, electric car maker, it's gone belly up. They're just falling like flies. Focal Point AFR Talk. We'll be back with more. Stay with us. Focal Point AFR Talk.